Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today, we're tackling, really big one. Predestination and foreknowledge. These terms, they carry a lot of weight, often some pretty strong emotions too. But the sources we're looking at offer, I think, a really helpful way through it. Our goal today, to clarify how divine knowledge, our choices, and grace all fit together on the path to salvation. We want to unpack it, without getting lost in jargon. Okay, so let's dive right in. How do these sources actually explain predestination and foreknowledge working together? Because honestly, they can sound like opposites sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. And what's really insightful, I think, is how the sources present two distinct perspectives on predestination. It helps resolve that tension you mentioned. So first, there's the human perspective. And from our side, it's presented as, choice-based. It means God has decided he'll save anyone who comes into the Son, full stop. If you believe, if you remain in the Son, you're in salvation. If you choose to leave, you leave. It really emphasizes the individual's free will in accepting and, crucially, persevering in that relationship.
Okay, so free will is front and center there. If you reject the Son, you're stepping outside that plan.
Exactly. But then you contrast that with God's perspective, and this is where foreknowledge predestination comes in. Now, this isn't God making you choose, not at all. It's about him knowing the final outcome of your free choices. God already knows, you see, who will ultimately freely choose to remain in the Son and receive salvation. And those specific people he foreknows. The sources say he also predestines them to become like the Son, character-wise, and eventually share his glory. That's the link to Romans 8.
Okay. So God knows the end of the story for those individuals based on their choices.
Precisely. We humans, we can't possibly know who these foreknown individuals are ahead of time. But the outcome, that glorification that will eventually reveal it, it affirms God's wisdom but keeps our responsibility intact.
That distinction is, it's really helpful. It keeps the human role clear. But with all this focus on choice, where does grace fit? Does it kind of push choice aside, or does it enable it?
It enables it. Definitely enables it. The sources are very clear. Nobody, no creature can actually follow the Son without God's grace. And that grace flows specifically from the Son's love, from the cross. God gives this grace to those he foreknows will, actually receive it and use it to follow the Son. But grace is always a gift. It's up to the person to receive it, and crucially, to keep going with it. To persevere.
So it's not automatic.
No. If someone rejects that grace, God won't keep pouring it out indefinitely. It's a divine empowerment, not like a magic spell.
And here's something that really jumped out at me from the sources. This idea that even the desire we have to seek God, that initial pull, that itself comes from grace, not from us being somehow inherently good or worthy. That feels profoundly humbling, doesn't it? It flips the script from my achievement to what I've been given.
Exactly right. It means even our loyalty, our devotion, those things we might feel proud of, they're actually the result of God's grace working in us. They aren't grounds for boasting. In fact, the sources warn that anyone who starts boasting about how they accepted grace, they're heading for a spiritual fall. They risk losing their way.
Losing their way. That ties into perseverance again. It sounds like sticking with it, commitment is absolutely key. And the sources seem to link that perseverance, interestingly, with suffering. That feels counterintuitive.
It does, but it's presented as integral. Suffering is part of the process of being conformed to the Son's image, part of being adopted as God's children, Romans 8 again. Suffering actually becomes like evidence, a marker. It shows you're among those God foreknew would endure the trials and ultimately be glorified with the Son.
So suffering isn't just random bad stuff. It can have a purpose in this framework.
A profound one. It works together for good for those who love God, proving their real participation in the Son's journey and future glory. And this connects right back to living by the Spirit, not just following fleshly, worldly impulses. Enduring trials, living by the Spirit, these are the signs, the evidence of being among those God foreknew and predestined. On the flip side, someone who lives by the flesh, even if they started out believing, they ultimately showed they weren't one God foreknew would persevere to the end.
Right. So our assurance, our confidence, it doesn't come from trying to guess if we're on some secret list. It comes from actually actively remaining connected to the Son, following the Spirit's lead in our lives. It's about how we live day to day.
Exactly. So to sort of wrap it up, the picture we get from these sources isn't predestination as some irresistible force that cancels out our will. It's more like divine knowing. God knows who, using their own free will, empowered by his grace, will make the choice to accept the Son and stay with him. The kingdom, as it says in Matthew and Revelation, is prepared for those God knew from the very beginning would freely accept the Son.
Okay, so let's bring it back to you, listening. What does all this mean practically? The sources seem to weave together God's big plan and our personal responsibility in this really intricate way. If grace is freely given to empower your free choice, and if sticking with it, even through hard times, is evidence of being known by God, maybe the question becomes, what actions, what choices can you make today to live in a way that aligns with the Son's path, really trusting in that grace to help you do it? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.